On February 22, 2024, 22-year-old Laken Riley left her dorm at the University of Georgia for what should have been a routine morning jog. A nurse student at Augusta University's College of Nursing, Laken was full of life and ambition. Friends described her as compassionate, driven, and deeply rooted in her Christian faith. She was someone who smiled easily, loved running, and had dreams of making a difference in people's lives through medicine. That Thursday morning, the weather was calm, and Laken set off on a popular trail near the intramural fields on the UGA campus. She was alone, but she didn't think she had any reason to be afraid. She had run this route many times before. But Laken never came back. When her roommate realized she was missing and hadn't returned messages, she called campus police around noon to report her disappearance. Within hours, officers launched a search. They retraced her steps, checking the trail, nearby roads, and any available surveillance footage. That afternoon, in a wooded area near the trail, officers made a grim discovery: Laken's body. She had been brutally attacked and left for dead just off the path, in a place where students often walked, jogged, or biked. What began as a missing person report had instantly become a homicide investigation. The news sent a shockwave through the campus and the Athens, Georgia community. Laken was well-known and well-liked. Her death didn't just feel tragic, it felt deeply personal, especially for the thousands of young women who use that trail daily. In response, law enforcement from multiple agencies poured resources into the investigation. Within 24 hours, police had a suspect in custody: 26-year-old Jose Antonio Ibarra, a Venezuelan national who had entered the U.S. illegally and was living in Athens. Ibarra's arrest sent the media into overdrive. Not only was he undocumented, but he had a criminal record. According to ICE, Ibarra had been arrested in New York City the year prior for endangering a child, among other charges, but had not been deported. This detail quickly transformed Laken's murder into a national political flashpoint. Some saw it as a heartbreaking consequence of a failed immigration system. Others urged restraint, arguing that violence has no nationality and that focusing on immigration status distracted from the broader tragedy. Still, the facts surrounding the case were deeply troubling. Surveillance footage, physical evidence, and digital tracking all placed Ibarra at the scene. Police believe that Laken was jogging when she was randomly attacked, pulled off the trail, beaten, and left to die. There was no prior connection between the two. She was not targeted for any personal reason. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The arrest sparked outrage not just because of the brutal nature of the crime, but because of how easily it could have been prevented. Many pointed to the gaps in the immigration and justice systems that allowed Ibarra to remain in the U.S. despite previous arrests. The incident led Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and other officials to call for stronger cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration agencies. Congressional leaders weighed in. Debates erupted across television networks and social media. And through it all, Laken's grieving family stayed largely silent, focused not on politics, but on the unbearable pain of losing their daughter. Laken's parents, Dustin and Allison Riley, described her as pure sunshine. She was their only daughter and had always been the heart of the family. She grew up in Woodstock, Georgia, a tight-knit community that was shattered by her death. At candlelight vigils held across the state, classmates and friends shared stories of Laken's kindness and positivity. One of her nursing professors broke down in tears during a tribute, recalling Laken's compassion with patients and her drive to serve others through healthcare. For many who knew her, it was unfathomable that her life had been taken in such a violent, senseless way. Back in Athens, fear gripped the student population. Many young women stopped going out alone. Parents flooded university administrators with questions about security. The trail where Laken was killed, once filled with runners and bikers, fell silent. UGA's administration promised changes: more police patrols, better lighting, more cameras. But for some students, it was too little, too late. The sense of safety that had defined their college experience was gone. As the legal process moved forward, Ibarra was formally charged with malice murder, felony murder, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and other crimes. Prosecutors indicated that they would pursue the harshest penalty available under Georgia law. Though Ibarra pleaded not guilty, the case against him continued to mount. Investigators had recovered Laken's smartwatch, which showed her exact movements and sudden stop along the trail. Her cause of death was ruled blunt force trauma to the head, with evidence of a violent struggle. DNA linked Ibarra to the scene. Forensic experts confirmed that he had likely dragged her off the trail in broad daylight, just feet from a place where students exercised every day. The public reaction to the murder only intensified as more details came to light. Vigils were held not just in Georgia, but across the country, as college students and advocates called for better campus safe measures. A viral hashtag, #RunForLaken, encouraged women to dedicate their daily runs to her memory. Thousands participated, sharing photos and messages in her honor. But alongside the grief came anger. Some political leaders used the case to push immigration reform. Former President Donald Trump visited Laken's hometown and mentioned her name at rallies. President Joe Biden, under pressure, expressed condolences to the Riley family and promised a review of enforcement protocols. The case became a touchpoint in the broader national debate about border security, sanctuary cities, and the failures of immigration enforcement. Yet for the people who knew Laken best, the focus remained on her life, not the politics. Her friends remembered a young woman who could light up a room, someone who mentored younger students and dreamed of one day working in pediatric care. Her family set up a foundation in her name, aimed at supporting women in healthcare and promoting campus safety. They urged the public not to reduce Laken to a political talking point, but to remember her humanity, her heart, her dreams, her impact. As of mid-2024, Jose Antonio Ibarra remains in custody awaiting trial. Prosecutors have not ruled out the death penalty. The case continues to make headlines as new information surfaces. But one truth remains painfully clear. A bright young life was stolen in an act of senseless violence, and no amount of justice will ever be enough to fill the void left behind. The murder of Laken Riley is more than just another crime story. It's a reflection of multiple failures. Failures in security, in policy, in oversight. It's a warning about the vulnerability of public spaces and the assumptions of safety we often take for granted. And above all, it's a devastating reminder of how quickly a normal day can become a nightmare. Laken didn't die in a war zone or a dark alley. She died while doing something she loved, running. Her story echoes in every step taken by women who now look over their shoulders during what should be peaceful morning jogs. It challenges us to ask hard questions. Are we doing enough to protect the people we love? Are our institutions doing enough to prevent predators from falling through the cracks? In the end, what happened to Laken Riley wasn't just tragic. It was unacceptable. And it has left a permanent scar on the hearts of her family, her university, and a nation still struggling to balance justice with safety, compassion with accountability.